Magdalena,
I'm making this video because I love lyrics, and I love it when other artists tell me about how they came to write the lyrics that they wrote. So I just released a song called Magdalena, which was inspired by Mary Magdalene, but it was inspired by a character that Kathleen McGowan created of Mary Magdalene in The Expected One, which is a trilogy. Sometimes it's called the Magdalene series, I guess. But the first one is The Expected One, and that's the one that's the most focused on the life of Mary Magdalene and Jesus. And in this book, the character of Mary Magdalene and Jesus are married, and they have children, and there's a whole story about it. So a lot of the lyrics in this song are references to the things that are said in that book. The other inspiration that I had was that a few weeks after I finished the series, so the last one's called The Poet Prince. Oh my gosh, by the way, I totally recommend these books. I love them. So the other book that I read that I was inspired by is called The Lost Gospel, Decoding the Ancient Text that Reveals Jesus' Marriage to Mary Magdalene. And in this book, I think the main inspiration that I got from this book was the last line of the song. So I'll come back to that. All right, so let's listen a bit, and I will talk about kind of each phrase that I feel is significant to explain. So this is my cymbal crash. I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, so red robed. In the book, she describes that the Marys, so Jesus' mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, there were a few of them, that there was this tradition of wearing this red garment, this red robe. So that's why I picked that. And then held the key because in the book it describes the relationship that Mary has to Jesus, not just a marital one, but one of being an apostle, and one in which she was meant to carry on Christianity. So she was given the role of spreading Jesus's message. And you know, what's interesting about this obviously is that she was written out of history, or she was rewritten for history. And obviously this, you know, wasn't how Christianity evolved. It did not evolve through Mary Magdalene. It evolved through the Catholic Church. That's a whole other story. And I'm not religious, really. I'm not Christian. I don't consider myself to be Christian. I love, you know, I love these characters. I'm also just taking poetic license writing a song, so I don't feel like I need to be extremely accurate. I'm just talking about my process, obviously. The holding the key, coming back to that, held the key because she was meant to carry it on. And there we have 4 minutes on the first line. Hopefully this is interesting. All right, here we go.
beneath the moon in Cancer, I take you as part of me.
So I don't remember why I did this line, beneath the moon in Cancer. I think there was some reference to some astrological thing in the book, but honestly, it's not full in my mind. My moon is in Cancer. There's a really famous Joni Mitchell song where she talks about, you know, the moon in Cancer, little grain, and I just love this symbol for femininity and emotions and things like that. And we'll come back to how Mary Magdalene is a representation of that, our emotionality, particularly tears. I felt a strong connection to this character from the book. I felt like, you know, even in just a spiritual way, like I could have been part of this lineage. I could have been the lineage of this beautiful tradition. And I also feel like maybe every woman, I can only speak for myself, but I'm guessing that this is more, you know, universal than just me. I think I identify with this idea of being misrepresented. I mean, just so we get an idea of what I'm talking about, because I haven't actually spoken about that yet. In around the 500s, something like that. But for 1300 years, the Catholic Church maintained that Mary Magdalene was written as a whore in the Bible, which was a complete fabrication. And in 1969, they recanted and they said, no, the priest who made that up was making it up. But for 1,300 years, this was the assumption about her. And honestly, until I read the expected one, I didn't realize that that's not what Mary Magdalene was, one. And I did not realize that the Catholic Church had recanted. And I wonder how many people do realize that the Catholic Church recanted and speak of Mary Magdalene as something other than a whore. So. So I see you, I connect with you. Misunderstood. I also just love playing with her name. She's, so I say, you are good. She's referred to in the last gospel also as, Mary of Magdala. And the Magdalene, that may have been like a title or something. So anyway, about her name. But you are good. I mean, just from that like little, snapshot of history that I read about, you can understand why I feel like I'm connecting with this character and with this being, this human that existed, but in the book, a character, recognizing that she's good, that she is not evil, that she is not sinful and to be maligned, which has been her experience in our human narrative for so many years. So this is a little instrumental. Let's go past that. So much to lose, you never did, 'cause you still love. So, one of the things that I wanted to mention, because a few people have asked me to do like a, what's my process sort of video, which I hope this fulfills a little bit, for just writing songs. And I wrote all of the lyrics to this song, as in like every part of this song existed in one fell swoop after I finished that book. And I wrote it within a few minutes. However, I changed out a lot of those words because I wanted the song to contain a wealth of information about this book. There was so much to talk about. So much to lose, you never did, because you still loved. That's sort of a theme within the book, that, she had this just onerous task. I mean, you imagine even though it was not accepted that she would be charged with spreading the word of Jesus, she considered that to be her job. So even though, maybe that wasn't what was being supported by the narrative after she left, she took that position seriously. So imagine she was not only now a widow to someone who was very brutally murdered, she was also a mother, so a widowed mother. She also had to trek. So, I mean, they traveled many, 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 many miles to France, I guess. That's a kind of a long walk or horse ride or whatever it is, I just can't even imagine the realness, the density of that sort of experience in that time. That kind of makes me tear up. The other thing is that when I write songs, it's very difficult for me to perform them immediately after I write them because I usually cry through them. And this one was no different. So yeah, you still loved. She did not give up her love for Jesus, according to Kathleen McGowan's narrative. She continued to love, even though she had every reason to stop. She had every reason to hate the world and humanity and her fate, but she continued to love. So we are right here below as above. One of the stories that was adjacent to the Mary Magdalene and Jesus story was one in present day for the book, about this secret society in France that is of the belief that Mary and Jesus were married, and that this guy who, this fictional character who is very wealthy and who commissions the main character who's not married to come to France because she's just written a book about maligned women. he has this secret society, and they talk about this concept of, so below as above. They also talk about alchemy. I'll talk about that too in the song. It's in the Lord's Prayer. And the idea is that our job is to create heaven on earth, I guess. So our job is to create as much peace, as much love, as much understanding, as much compassion on this planet, so that it can become more and more a reflection of heaven. And so that's what that line is about. Mary, can you whisper in my ear? So I guess this is me talking to Magdalena. That was something else that I changed in the song. Was initially I had the subject change around, where I was sometimes talking about her and sometimes talking about you, and I thought that ended up being confusing, so I changed it. So I'm speaking directly to Mary Magdalene in that line, Mary, can you whisper in my ear? This ancestral coma makes it so hard to hear, which is talking about this, 1,300 years, this ancestral history that we've, passed on ancestor to ancestor, generation to generation, about this fictitious character of, Mary Magdalene, the whore. And honestly, even if she was, even if that was her profession, in her life, where she, let's say like she wasn't a mother, she wasn't Jesus's wife, she didn't do any of this, she was just a prostitute. I think Jesus would have loved her anyway, and I don't believe that would have been a reason to loathe her throughout the ages. But this just sort of goes to show that, when you're a woman, there's appropriate and not appropriate, and it changes depending on what century you happen to fall in, where in the world you happen to be born, and that there's a lot of rules to being a woman, and it's something that we slowly start to wake up from, this coma of, I love that, like, the generations after me, I guess maybe at this point, are not even accepting these roles that are assigned to them. They're not even like questioning why aren't we getting, equal pay? Why aren't we getting respect? They're like going and expecting it, a lot of them. And I think that that's amazing. That wouldn't have been something that would have even occurred to me as someone from, I was born in the 80s, and it certainly wouldn't have occurred to my mother, and, definitely not to her, so I feel like we awaken through the ages, but it's hard. It's hard to change all of a sudden, so that's kind of what the ancestral coma is it's like, it's this slow waking up. It takes a lot of miniature changes, minute adjustments to change how we perceive something, in this case, women. So. I think that line wasn't actually so much from the book. It was sort of just from my own experience of what it's like to delve into spirituality. Is this just idea that, we're kind of playing this game here, and we're not a game in the sense of like, woo, but, just like we put on roles, we interact in ways that we, to an extent, I think, have predetermined before we come here, and we kind of play this game, this dance with other souls. And that, so it's like this theater of strife. It's a game to savor in this theater of strife. So I'll stop there. Magdalena robbed of words, in the sense that she wasn't there to defend herself throughout the 1,300 years of her name being defamed, but also that she wrote a gospel and was not part of the canonical Bible that was, put together. I wonder why. So here we go. So Your Time Returns is again kind of a reference to the present tense narrative of the book. There's apparently a line in the Mary circles, who, by the way, chant the Lord's Prayer that was taught by Jesus as their daily practice. The time returns is something that said a lot, and what I got from it was like, the opportunity wasn't seized when Jesus was alive to create a world filled with love, but you always get another chance. The time returns. So I changed it up here. We are good. We as in, all women. We deserve to be credited and not dismissed, right, in history. This is Masood playing the hung, which is pretty cool.
In the time of darkness and before your tearful plight.
The time after Jesus' death is referred to as the time of darkness. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about after his crucifixion. You alone had eyes to see him rematerialize. I mean, she was the one that he came to when he resurrected. She was the one. The reason she was there to dress his body, to like oil it, to do some sort of ceremonial rite to his body after his crucifixion. This was a task that was reserved for the mother of the deceased if he was not married, and the wife of the deceased if he was. So she was there.
You alone had eyes to see him rematerialize.
Okay, so do not cling to that which isn't real. That's what Jesus tells her. So this is his voice. So this is Jesus talking to Mary. My God, I'm gonna cry. This is him, reassuring her that she's gonna be okay after he's physically gone. That he'll always be with her. But because she was this maligned woman, this line, I guess I got this from the book. Do not cling to me was translated for a very long time, I guess, as do not touch me, as support for the fact that she was this dirty woman, which doesn't even make sense given his message. Retranslated, it can mean do not cling to me, meaning don't spend your life mourning me. Don't, you must also live this life. So he says, do not cling to that which isn't real, my poetic license. Enjoy the sweetness of these moments we came here to feel. This is sort of like my sensitive superhero work, where I'm really in love with this concept that we're here to feel. We're here to feel stuff. That's the experience of life. There is nothing more to life than the experience of feeling it. So, why curse our feelings and our experiences that cause our feelings, because that's why we're here. Runs through my veins. That's, poetic license, like as if we're related. Oh, alchemist of pain. So that's another thing that was taken from the Secret Society in the book, is they talk a lot about alchemy. Alchemy, is literally turning something into gold, I guess. So yeah, there's that sort of, traditional, literal interpretation of alchemy, I guess. But then there's also all these flowery, beautiful, metaphoric alchemies, and one of them could be transforming pain into joy, or transforming a life with very little to look forward to into something beautiful and flourishing. So yeah, alchemist of pain. And also, one of the things that I learned about Mary Magdalene, I think from the last gospel, was that the word maudlin, I guess, comes from her name. She was known for having a lot of tears, showing a lot of emotion. And I think that really connected me to her too. I really loved this idea that she was not only a intensely spiritual person, but that she felt so deeply. So this part I worked on so much. So we've longed for truth. It took me forever to come up with, so it's like Magdalena, 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 line, Magdalena, 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 line, and I wanted those two lines to rhyme. So I switched these out so many times, trying to come up with like the perfect way to end this song, because I felt a little bit of pressure to, I don't know, to make this the best that it could be. I guess that's not pressure. I just felt invested in it. And yeah, so I finally came up with this line. I knew at one point, after fiddling with it enough, that I wanted the second line to be, what would you do? I'll get to that. I don't even have to play the rest of the song, actually, because that's all that happens. What would you do? So the reason that I do that is in the Lost Gospel, Mary, Magdalene, and Jesus as husband and wife are said to be like two halves, like the two halves of Christianity. Like Jesus was not Christianity, but Mary and Jesus were Christianity, that their religious group, their circle, knew them to be the center, the focal point of their religion or their spirituality. And there's, this obviously the saying, what would Jesus do? And so I kind of flipped it and was like, what would Mary do? So the line before that is, we've longed for truth. And that one has the possibility of making me tear up a little bit too. The we've longed for truth part, I just felt like this book kind of highlighted a need that I hadn't maybe been conscious of before, but just this need to have more empowering stories about historical women, to have, better stories, more fair depictions of them. And, part of the reason that we don't is that women weren't writing history for so long. And when you have the perspective of the person writing it that is printed, that is retained, then that's what you get throughout history. It's the victors that get to write the history. In fact, Kathleen McGowan, the author of this book, The Expected One, wrote, history is not what happened, but what is written down, which is exactly what I was talking about. I'm talking about exactly what she wrote. It's not until we have people with various, I was trying to explain this to my kids the other night because we were talking about Looney Tunes and how sometimes it can be a little racist and why that is, and sexist, and that if we only keep the written perspectives of few, we will have few perspectives to read about in the future. And I really don't think that people are gonna have a problem with this era at all, unless, all of technology is eradicated, in which case, we'd have maybe just the books to go by, but still there's a pretty large, spectrum. So yeah, I ended up liking my little rhyming pair there. Was, it's a creative rhyme, truth and do. But anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed learning about my process and how I write lyrics. I love lyrics, so I love talking about them. If you want me to do more of these kinds of videos in the future, I would love to. I'd love to know if it is of interest, perhaps first though. So that's it. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think was the relationship of Mary Magdalene to Jesus. Do I want to start that debate? Or, what you thought about Mary Magdalene before this video, or learning differently about her. Oh, anyway, all right, bye.